Good evening. It is February 26th at 6 o'clock, and I call this regularly scheduled Dunwoody City Council meeting to order. Councilman Harris, can you lead us in the invocation and the pledge?
Well, yes, there we go. Everyone can please rise. At this meeting, help us to make decisions which keep us faithful to our mission and reflect our values. Give us strength to hold to our purpose, wisdom to guide us, and a keen perception to lead us. And above all, keep us charitable as we deliberate. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
Public comments. If you'd like to make a public comment, the cards are back there. I have a few. We'll have each speaker will have 3 minutes for a total of 30 minutes, and then we have another session at the end. Ms. Thompson, if you'll join us and just introduce yourself, say your name, and you'll have 3 minutes. Thank you for coming tonight.
Good evening. My name is Jamonica Thompson. I moved to Dunwoody 2.5 years ago. I'm from a small town in Greensboro, North Carolina. You probably never heard of it. I'm a licensed professional counselor here in the state of Georgia, and I've worked with the mentally ill for 18 years. So I'm here tonight. Dunwoody is a beautiful area, and I love all the development that we're doing. I recently tried out Grana. That was great. I was excited to find out that we're getting a snooze breakfast bar and I can walk to it. So it's truly a beautiful area, and I feel like we're doing a lot of things right. However, I feel like there's one area where we have dropped the ball as a city, and that's okay because maybe we didn't know it. Dunwoody has a lot of homeless people here. And I'm seeing some of the same homeless people that I've seen for the past 2 years. They are members of this community just like you and I. They're just unhoused. And so I'm here tonight because I feel like there needs to be an agenda as to how we're going to reduce the population and percentage of unhoused people. So 40% of people that are homeless suffer from mental illness. Some of them have things like mood disorders, like major depressive disorder. Others have psychotic disorders like schizophrenia, schizoaffective. When people that are mentally ill are not taking their medication, they don't function like you and I. They don't balance checkbooks, they don't work, they lose housing because some of their conditions are just that debilitating to where they don't function when they're off of medication. And I'm sure some of you guys have seen them. There's a young man that goes up and down Ashford Dunwoody. He has a big Target cart and he fills that cart full of stuff. And he pushes that heavy cart up and down long sidewalks. Sometimes you see him at the McDonald's digging in the trash. He is clearly somebody that suffers from mental illness. There's another young lady, when I went to Nordstrom Rack the other day, she was sleeping outside of the entrance. She also, you see her in Perimeter Mall, she'll be talking to herself and just acting very odd. And she's also someone that's clearly mentally ill. So I'm seeing them a lot in the malls, on the couches and the seating areas. They'll go to the Dunkin', buy a coffee and stay in there 5 hours with suitcases. So you know this is someone that is homeless. I'm here tonight because I feel like we need to consider building a homeless shelter here in Dunwoody. I'm not talking about a shelter for migrants. I'm not talking about shelters for people immigrating from other places. I'm talking about a shelter for people that are here locally that are homeless and unhoused. I feel like we need that. And it's not a shelter where they would go in and stay all day. It's a shelter where you go in throughout the night and then you have to be back out in the daytime, being productive, filling out applications, whatever needs to be done. And there would also need to be like a case manager or somebody that can help link them to services. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Mr. Hickey.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Bob Hickey. I'm a citizen of Dunwoody. I've been living here for almost 50 years. I call myself a citizen, not a resident, because I'm a citizen. I vote and pay taxes, and I've been here a long time. I'm speaking on two items tonight, agenda items 6 and 7. After the council meeting last time, 2 weeks ago, I sent a message to several of you about my concern about the items on the agenda tonight. I fully support our police department. Fully support our police department. Unlike a lot of you who only give it words, not actions, I support our police department. I have their backs. Look, some of the stuff the mayor and the council have done over the years, you do not indicate your support of having the police department's back. I have their back. I support increasing the manpower as recommended in the Berry Dunn report, 25 to 30 people, okay, increase in manpower. I support the increase in the police department manpower when the total plan, including how to fix the structural deficit, the plan to fund the police department is presented to the citizens of Dunwoody. And the plan should be the number of police that are going to be provided to the police department, the timing of when they're to be provided, and how they're to be paid for. The current item 6 and 7 funding tonight is totally misleading and inadequate and inaccurate when it only provides funding through the end of 2025. We all know that's a joke. It's going to be continued, so we need to step up and face it. I do not support any piecemeal plan. I do not support the plan that is before you tonight. I request that you defer this until you can come up with the total plan of how you're going to provide the police chief and our new police chief, when he comes aboard, with the number of people that he needs and has requested. Okay, I think you need to have the total plan and give it to him and get him off to a running start. So that means you have to defer items 6 and 7 tonight on voting. Number 2, I walk and drive throughout the city at all times of the day and night. I've been around the city almost in every neighborhood since September of last year. I was in almost every neighborhood. And most of the people in those neighborhoods support the same thing that I'm saying tonight. They say, we do not see enough police patrol cars in our city. We see city employees on mowers. We see them on blowers and cleaning out trash containers. We need to see police patrol, not mowers, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Hickey.
Thank you.
Ms. Hirsch.
I'm Andrea Hirsch. This is my first time ever speaking at a city council.
Well,
meeting.
welcome.
Thank you.
Though you've sat up here.
Invited me to come speak, so I said I would. I saw on the agenda that there's first read to increase the number of individuals on the Alcohol License Review Board. And it states that the mayor and council have determined that 2 additional members of the Alcohol License Review Board are needed to assist with the operation of said board and to increase the effectiveness of said board. I'm the chair of the board. No one's come and asked me any questions of what I think. We barely meet, maybe twice a year. We seem to show up when we're supposed to. We do all the work that's asked of us. I mean, if y'all have a reason you need 2 more people, that's fine. But to say to increase the effectiveness, I'm just not aware of what we're not getting done that needs to be done. It sounds like we're not doing something. And as far as I'm aware, anytime someone asks us to do it, we show up and we get the job done. And that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I have a few comments tonight. One of them first on the budget discussion towards the end of the meeting. I see that it says specifically a $75,000 increase in police to fund the cost of the Berry Dunn study that was completed this year. I'm looking for clarification on that because the city has already made 8 payments totaling the full amount of $114,000 for the Berry Dunn report. So I'm not sure where an additional $75,000 comes into play. Hopefully we'll get some clarification on that. When you get to the discussion talking about the Alcohol License and Review Board, I think what's more of importance and urgency for this council when you're discussing the alcohol is to find out why there were dozens and dozens of businesses in this city that did not pay their alcohol license fees for last year or this year. And they were allowed to illegally continue to operate. So when you're discussing alcohol tonight, find out what the status is of all the alcohol licenses in the city, because it's dangerous not to have people licensed properly, and it's a detriment to our city's financial accounts. And I'm not sure what's going on with that. That seems more important when you're talking about alcohol. Then my next topic, I sent y'all all a email this afternoon. Hopefully you played it. It was the 911 call of the Mr. Tyre representative calling for help in the city of Dunwoody. I hope that if you're worried about the Barry Dunn report in our police department, that you would also be worried about that 911 call that I sent you. I've been trying to find out about it for the last couple of years. No one in the city, Barry Dunn didn't look at it. None of y'all have seemed to know anything about it. So that's why my lawsuit exists.
Thank you, Mr. Harsh.
Thank you.
Thank you. There'll be, if you have a public comment and you didn't make it, or you want to make another public comment, the cards are at the back of the room. And I see no more public comments. We'll have another session at the end. Consent agenda. Anybody have any questions or comments? Go ahead, Stacy.
Carl, I saw you come here. If you could just kind of walk me through what exactly we're trying to do at Donald Bannister. I mean, I understand the setting and what we're going to get out of it. I guess kind of if you could verbalize what's been happening.
Yeah, what's the
And
problem?
yeah, what's the problem and what we're trying to, how we're going to try and solve it.
The item that's on the agenda tonight is a preliminary study. It's a geotechnical assessment. There's some flooding concerns that have been out there at the park. We attempted, had a discussion out there with maintenance staff and park staff, try to come up with, an in-house solution to try to address it. But in the larger storm events, there was still a number of, flooding issues. I'm not sure if you've been out there recently, but, particularly you can go days after, after a heavy rain event, and there's a lot of heavily saturated areas there just particularly don't drain well. So we're just trying to look at exploring some various options. This just kind of like the nature center at Dunwoody Park, kind of similar where you have areas that were developed before the current design conditions exist. So we want to kind of bring them up to date.
Perfect.
Current
Thank you.
standards.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments or concerns about the alcohol, about the consent agenda?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Stacy, second by Joe. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that passes unanimously. Thank you. Is Chief Grogan on this call? Because I don't have a mouse. I can't.
I
He
am
is?
here.
Okay, there he is. Okay. All right, Sharon, whenever you're ready, or you, Jessica. Oh, never mind. I do have a mouse.
Request for 5
Left-handed.
additional,
Right.
sorry,
Sorry, go
request for
ahead.
5 additional personnel for the Dunwoody Police Department, Chief Grogan, Deputy Chief Mike Carlson.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Can you hear me?
Not very well. Can you speak a little louder?
Yes.
Okay,
Can you hear
thank
me?
Yeah.
Okay. This is the second reading of this item where we're requesting 5 additional personnel, a sergeant and 3 officers, and a civilian fleet maintenance coordinator position. Since the last meeting and listening to some concerns of council members, we've looked at renaming this unit the Crime Response Team, and then renaming our traffic unit that's called the Crime Response Team to more appropriately represent the duties they have, which is traffic enforcement. And I've kind of redone the memo a little bit to address some of the additional duties that we expect this unit to take care of. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys may have.
Questions? No questions. So I want to comment about the finances for council's benefit as well as anything else. So we have these federal funds. They have to be used on a list of projects or purchases or whatever that the federal government defined in the ARP Act. Public safety is one of the uses. We clearly have to have a long-term plan on finances, but when Richard comes up here later to talk about the budget amendment, we're going to find that we didn't deficit spend at all again. We budget carefully and cautiously. We tend to have underestimated revenues in the past and overestimated expenditures. I have a lot of concerns. We need a plan as a city, but it's not going to happen overnight. There's no change we can make to our budgeting that can happen as quickly as using these ARP funds to get more police officers out. When the positions that are vacant and the positions that are full or that we're creating tonight are full, we will gladly add more positions. We will figure the finances out as we work towards the goal of the plan. I think Deputy Chief can talk a little bit about where we, the study took far too long to complete. It took far too long to complete, and we are in a different place now than we were when that study began. So Deputy Chief Carlson, if you could give us a little history about why this is y'all's priority over whatever else. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So yeah, the Barry Dunn process, as you all know, took an inordinate amount of time
Right.
for them to conduct all their interviews, pull all of the data. This was a couple of years ago. So when the Barry Dunn report did come out, the number one, when they were interviewing the officers, the number one request that they had, we need more people. We need more people. Well, they pulled data from 21. Most of the interviews and everything took place in 22. So between 21 and 22, we were at a critical staffing shortage along with the COVID pandemic, which means when our officers got sick, they were placed out. So the officers on the road were feeling the burden because not only were dealing with high call volume, but they were short staffed. So law enforcement, it evolves and priorities change, and that's why the chief and I are asking to come up with this unit, not only because we have a need now. It is our number one priority. Our staffing levels are up. We're not in the pandemic. Yes, some of our officers still can catch it, but we have different protocols now, which means the staffing on the streets is a lot better, which means we're not hearing those complaints. One of my main, one of my main objectives when I become chief, and it's always been is that retention piece, and that's why we're asking for this. This is a retention piece. When you have an agency our size, when we have an agency our test. Okay. When you have an agency our side, we need to create those incentives, whether it's creating positions, lateral moves, something for these officers to look forward to develop that career path that they're looking for. And we do have a problem here in Dunwoody that we want to address.
Mayor, I would add one thing to that. We currently do not have anyone assigned to this type duty. And so it's going to fill a gap that we have in our operations. And we feel like it'll be, a good investment in the department, and we can address a concern that we continue to have each and every year.
Okay. Does anybody have any further questions, Stacy?
I just would like to say, I like the pivot and renaming it the crime response, just because it's all encompassing. And I think that was a good decision on your all's part, and listening to you with the explanation and seeing where we are. Thank you for that. And the Barry Dunn study did take far too long.
Yes, ma'am.
So I appreciate that.
Anyone else? This is an action item too.
Move to approve.
Moved by Rob,
Second,
second by Stacy. Any further questions or discussion?
Just one
Joe.
comment. Yeah, unfortunately, I really appreciate everything the due diligence that staff has done behind the scenes to get us to where you are. You're sincere, you're acting with integrity, very respectful for everybody. I understand that this has been presented. And I appreciate the fact that we start with a discussion, the way this council's been doing the last few years is instead of just putting up for an action, which could have happened, it starts with a discussion. Even though we're all part-time and so on, and have other lives, things going on in our lives, I'd love to take it up another notch. I know we may have a retreat item, but to look at this holistically from all cash budgeting perspective of what are the unmet needs in total, to look at the Barry Dunn study as a whole, of what are we forecasting? I know this is a one singular item, right? But what are we forecasting out? What are the unmet needs that we could potentially forecast and budget, right? So that's a process that I'd like to see, all right, number one. And number two, I understand the short term, but as I stated a couple weeks ago, I do want to take that political hit as needed and make the tough decisions to secure long-term cash income so that this is not just a 2-year thing. And I'm ready. If we get staff ready to present I stated this 2 weeks ago, I stay the same way. So if we get staff and whoever the subject matter experts that present us option A, B, and C for cash flow options of having long-term systemic fix, and we put the pros and cons together, and we as a council come back and say, okay, go for it. And I'm ready to make that decision as soon as staff can get that presented. So I know that's not under your aim. So I just wanted to make that comment to where I am. Thank you so much.
Any further discussion? There's a question on the floor. I call the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Sharon, that's 5-1. Thank you, Deputy Chief and Chief.
Thank you.
Item number 7 on the agenda is a resolution amending the budget for the fiscal year 2024 for the General Fund, American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA 2 Fund, and the Capital Projects Funds of the City of Dunwoody, Georgia, pursuant to Article 5, Section 5 of the Charter of the City, beginning January 1, 2024, and ending December 31, 2024, appropriating the amount shown on each budget as expenditures, adopting the item of anticipated funding sources, prohibiting expenditures to exceed appropriations, and prohibiting expenditures from exceeding actual funding sources.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So to piggyback off the last agenda item, this is a budget amendment to adjust mainly the ARPA 2 fund in order to fund the crime response team and the civilian fleet coordinator. It would be approximately $1.3 million for the crime response team. That would have them provide funding starting July 1st of this year and all of the remainder of the year, plus all of 2025. And then that would cover that. And then that would also cover the April 1st start date for the fleet coordinator. So that's part of this budget amendment. The second part of this budget amendment is $600,000 in EMS funding. When we originally set it up, it was set up for 3 years to be $200,000 each. When we finally finished negotiating with the cab, 1 year was about $566,000. So we're going to eat up all that funding in 1 year. This would set aside funding for another year. So those are the 2 budget amendments that are before you. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, comments, concerns, questions? Go ahead, Stacy.
Richard, remind me, do we have to spend the ARP2 money? Is there a deadline?
ARPA 2, no. ARPA 1, it has to be obligated by the end of December 2024 and spent by December 31 of 2026. That's ARPA 1. ARPA 2, we set up with the same intent, but it doesn't have those same qualifications tied to it.
So, I mean, it would be wonderful if we can fully staff the new crime scene unit by July 1. And that would be wonderful. But we can continue to use the ARP2 money to fund it as long as it lasts. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Anybody?
Move to approve.
Moved by Tom. Second by Catherine. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I call the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. And just a note on EMS, it does not look very positive that we're going to receive any relief from the legislature, which means that we haven't had enough data to see if one is helping and everything. It'll be a few more months before we really know, but the bills that might have provided relief seem pretty stalled. All right. Oh, me. Oh, but Sharon, you had to read it.
Item number 8 is an ordinance of the city of Dunwoody to increase the number of members serving on the Board of Ethics. Mayor Deutsch.
All right, so as Ms. Hirsch so aptly pointed out, the wording in the memos was not exactly helpful. It was, the intention was to make it easier to find a quorum because they don't have, these boards don't have regular meeting dates. And in the past, before, when you were appointed, for example, 2 people had moved out of town and not notified us. So this gives us, and sometimes these things seem to come up pretty quickly, like, you know, I don't know. So I just thought, since the Board of Ethics had 2 alternates and so to make a total of 7, and the alternates were asked to attend every meeting, I just thought it would be smoother to have 7 in case there are issues and give people, some new people or additional people, opportunities to be involved. We have a lot of people that want to serve on city boards. So anybody have questions on, this is a first read. Stacy, Catherine, sorry.
As you bring 2 new people on here, it does state that there will be biennial training on all the rules. I think it'll be a great opportunity to get everybody trained. I know they don't meet
Yes.
in a long time, but I think they still need to get the training and per this
Yes,
ordinance.
absolutely. We need to make sure we're doing that. Appreciate that. Anybody else? This is just a first read. It's on business item, but we don't vote tonight, right? Okay. You want to read the second one as well?
Item number 9 is an ordinance of the city of Dunwoody to increase the number of members serving on the Alcohol License Review Board.
It's the same explanation. It was to give us a little cushion should we not be able to get a quorum for a meeting for whatever reason, and also to expand. We have a lot of people waiting to be appointed to city boards, and it just creates opportunities. All right, and Catherine's comment is well taken, and these are first reads. We'll see them again in a couple of weeks. Thank you. Richard, you are up next.
Good evening. So the item before you is the discussion of the fiscal year 2023 budget amendment. So this is a cleanup or a closeout of the 2023 budget is the purpose of this amendment. Couple of items to discuss first. So this item is increasing revenues in the general fund by $1.1 million or 3%. And it's increasing expenditures by a little bit over $600,000 or 2%. Based on this, we will not need to use the fund balance of $508,000 that we had originally budgeted. So good news definitely coming out of this is that we did see revenue in the general fund higher than anticipated, and expenditures came in right on, slightly below expenditures in the general fund. So good news for 2023. There's other adjustments in other funds. I'll talk about the general fund real quickly. There's 3 main line items that came in from a revenue perspective above budget: insurance premium taxes, building structures and equipment fees, otherwise known as permit fees, and interest revenue. Those all 3 were the ones that came in above. As far as the
Richard, I
yes.
picked up that check yesterday or I mean, they gave me that check
Yes,
from Georgia
yes,
Power, the
yes.
franchise free, and it was higher.
Yes, yes.
Is that not reflected on here? 'Cause-
It's not, we got it. I already have the agenda item in the works and
Right, okay.
everything. So yes.
So that's another,
Correct. So we had accrued $2.5 million. We'd planned on $2.5 million for our Georgia Power franchise fee. They pay once a year in February for the previous year. It came in at $2.8 million. So it's $300,000 above what we had planned.
yeah, and they just hand me a check at lunch. True story.
That is correct. Yes.
Strangest thing.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
there used to be a breakfast where they would give it out, I guess, before the pandemic, and then yeah, it's a little strange in 2023 for that to happen.
It's the fastest I've seen you move. You come
Right.
back here and
I'm
give it to us as
like,
soon as
so
you
bad.
you
Do
want to
not
part
want
that one. Yes.
This in my purse,
Yes,
thank you.
yes.
Lucky I didn't go to the mall.
Yeah.
I forgot, not that I would have spent it because I couldn't, but I would have forgotten about it.
Anyways, so adjustments within a couple of departments, city council, we had one more on healthcare than we had budgeted for. City clerk had the election fees come in from DeKalb runs our elections. They came in higher than what we had budgeted. Facilities had higher, about $110,000 higher cost than we expected. They were really working down a backlog of a lot of repairs and maintenance that needed to be done to city-owned facilities. Within police, the Barry Dunn study. So we had budgeted all of that in 2022 when we had signed the original agreement. It was milestone billing. So it was $117,000 is what we paid them. We just didn't pay it all in 2022. We paid $75,000 in 2023. So adjusting that budget there. And then 61,000 in public works for the deputy director position. And finally, community development is the split of our contract franchise fees for the permit fees that are collected. So those are the adjustments within the general fund. The other adjustments are really just matching up expenditures with items that happen throughout the year. If you see anything, for example, within the grant fund 250, those are just grants that were executed throughout the year, and we're just cleaning up what we spent and recognizing the revenue based on their most of them function as a reimbursement grant. So we turn in, recognize the expense, and get the revenue back. And so we're adjusting that grant fund. Hotomoto taxes, that's another strong revenue point for us. They came in above budget as well. And so we're adjusting Hotomoto tax revenue up, as well as a contribution to the general fund and a contribution to our CVB, Discover Dunwoody. And I believe that's on a very high level. That's all the adjustments that are within this amendment. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions, anybody? Can you say that one more time about the Barry Dunn study for me, please? So
Sure.
the total bill was what?
It was $117,000, I believe.
And
Yes.
we had paid roughly 40 or 50,000 earlier, and then the remainder was due upon completion.
Yes. In
75.
2023.
Right,
Yes.
in
yes,
2023.
yes,
Okay.
yes. There were milestone billings throughout
All right,
that agreement.
Go ahead,
Is that all the budget?
Tom.
1 year?
Yeah, thank you. I don't necessarily have a question. I just maybe a couple questions thrown in there, but more of a statement. And anyone that's been listening to me the last couple months probably knows where I'm going with this. I've been really disheartened with a lot of the public dialogue over the past 6 months as it regards to city finances and painting a picture that we are on a death spiral into doomsday and bankruptcy and all sorts of wonderful, horrible things. And discussion, if you want to debate priorities of where we should be assigning money, that's one thing. But when we're talking about the actual dollars and cents, that's objective. That's figures that are really not up for debate. They're set in stone, and we've got financial reports to back up everything. So Rich, I just want to ask you a couple of questions, and I won't go too far back. I believe you started with the city in 2020.
Correct.
So we'll start there because I won't put you on the spot to answer questions from before your time with the city. Since 2020, has the city ever had to use its undesignated fund balance or dip into reserves to operate the city?
It is not.
In fact, the exact opposite is true. We've ended each year with a surplus so we've actually grown that undesignated fund balance. I believe we're up to 10 months now, correct?
Correct. After I estimate after we get through with the actuals and the financial audit for 2023, I do estimate that we'll be at 10 months. reserve.
And I think it's important for our residents to know that there have been challenges and challenges lie ahead, but overall, the city is financially healthy, despite what some naysayers may be saying. That doesn't happen by accident. You joined us in 2020, and we all know what happened that year. And I think the city has done a tremendous job through some very difficult times. The COVID, of course, and then the pandemic hangover, and the highest inflation rate in the past 40 years. There's been a lot of uncertainty. There's been a lot of challenges. And through all of that, we have not had to dip into our reserve funds. And that doesn't happen by accident. I think conservative budgeting is a part of that. And let me just pause for a second, because everything I talked about numbers, what I'm going to say now is a bit more subjective, but I think it's fair to state that conservative budgeting, sound fiscal policy, and effective financial controls and management are the reason why we're in the position we are today. Is that a fair statement to make?
That's fair. Yes.
So I just want to reassure the public that Dunwoody is financially strong. I mean, and again, I don't want to sugarcoat or sound Pollyanna here or anything, but we've overcome challenges, and challenges lay ahead. But the city is financially strong, and I think based on how we've navigated some very uncertain waters over the last several years, I'd like to believe that should instill the confidence that we can navigate the challenges that lie ahead. But the most important thing to point out is that we have not used any reserve or any undesignated fund balance to operate the city. And I think it's important for the residents, because a lot of conversations I have with people, they hear some things, or they read things on social media, and they think the city's bankrupt, and that's very far from the truth. So thank you.
Anyone else? Oh, Catherine, sorry.
Also not really a question, but I want to highlight the $2 million that we get from the hotel motel tax. It's $2 million. So if folks out there listening are having people come visit from out of town, enjoy our hotels, Dunwoody hotels, because that money comes to us and is not insubstantial. Thank you.
I have a question on something else, but does anybody have any questions or comments on this? And this we have to approve. It's a discussion today. Do we want to go over it public? I think actually we should review this again at the next meeting, and it should be the first item under business. Because not everyone who's interested stays to hear it. I appreciate this work. I think we have a really good story that we struggle to get out. I think we have to be much more communicative during this next budget process. I also think that there are always going to be challenges. I think these are interesting times in Georgia. The legislature is making lots of movement towards maybe restricting property taxes. However, everything they're proposing, we already have. So there's actually literally nothing they can do to us in terms of restricting property taxes. For city taxes, school taxes are they don't have a freeze, and there's some discussion of that down at the Capitol. There's also some interesting potential with sales taxes. So we shall see. We'll know a lot more this summer, I think, about revenue and everything else, but I appreciate all this. And while it could go on consent, I think it's important to share again. And so we will see you at the next meeting, but I have a question about alcohol licenses.
Sure.
Because, it said during public comment, I want to make sure I understand because I know the Department of Revenue, along with us, shut down a bar that wasn't paying their licenses, like, I don't know for how many years. They actually came and seized all the alcohol. So I'm curious where we are and what you're doing, and I know nobody from community development is here, and some of that falls under them, I think, but if you could give us what that would be helpful for council.
Sure. So alcohol licenses are due first of the year,
Mhm.
expire at the end of every year. Everybody has to renew their turning their application. There's not much of a grace period there. They need to have their, if they're serving, they need to have their license January 1 of the year, basically. We work with them in advance. We send out any renewal packets weeks and weeks in advance to let them know what forms need to be turned in. They can come up here and pay, obviously. We do work with community development and code enforcement. If there is someone that doesn't have a license, has not renewed their license, we work with code and development. So we're running reports on a weekly basis. During the 1st of January, frankly, on a daily basis, we're running reports to see who hasn't paid, who hasn't renewed. We'll reach out to them and give them some contact. We'll send them an email or a letter that says, hey, we need payment. We need you to renew your license within 5 days. If they don't do that, we'll send code enforcement out there. Maybe it's a warning, send them out again. If they still don't come back and issue that ticket then. So we've got a process in place working with community development and code enforcement to make sure everybody turns in, everybody that's serving alcohol has a license and has all the necessary pouring permits and everything.
And so just out of curiosity, like how many are we talking about that are 10 days? So it sounds like maybe a couple of weeks late, you will have contacted everyone that hasn't paid.
Yes.
So how many about is that?
So we have approximately, there's 130 licenses within
Okay.
the city, approximately.
Right.
That can vary. Last time I looked, it was last week, and we had 7 that we were still working. And it can be as simple as a signature on a form. We're not going to issue that license until it's totally complete. They might have even paid. We might have had their funding. They might have gone through the state to get their license and everything. They've completed all the tasks except they need to sign their agent representation form or something like that. So we won't issue it until all the paperwork's completed.
But they get to keep pouring?
In theory, no.
Okay.
But
So
we're-
maybe internally, because like when we had the businesses that serve minors, like Walmart and
Mhm,
the
mhm.
Total Wine, when they simply didn't show up for a meeting, there were penalties,
Mhm.
even though, quite frankly, whether you notified, I mean, how do you know that you notified somebody that's still working at Total Wine or whatever? So I don't know I don't understand the process for this, and I don't know how long the one that the revenue department came and shut down. I suspect, given what was going on there, it was a long time that they hadn't paid. In fact, they were probably not pretending to operate legally, that one. Now that I think about it, they were probably not on anyone's radar. But Eric, I think we probably need to look at the process for this, because if alcohol is regulated, whether I think it should be or not, the way it's regulated, and there are licenses and there are requirements, then there ought not be, it ought to be a process by which, I mean, maybe January 1st is a holiday, but by the 5th, I mean, there's lots of things in life that you get a late fee or a penalty or a consequence if you're late for. And I'm not comfortable with messing around with alcohol because it's regulated the way it's regulated. So if y'all could discuss it in-house and then I'm presuming, because the Department of Revenue I'm guessing, I'm curious if they're also not registered with the state, or if they're doing their state registration because they're more scared of the consequences than from us. So given the way we react when there are other violations of alcohol rules that come before a board, it seems like this is a process that could be firmed up some. And I understand there's a lot happening at the first of the year. Maybe we change the date to March 1st or something. I don't know. But if you could just figure that out, if y'all could figure that out with community development, that would be a really good strategy, I
would say
think.
the process will get much better once we implement the software package.
Right.
that we're
Oh,
trying to
right.
Implement here in the fall. It'll be
Okay.
much more, it'll not be as big a manual process. It'll all be
Right.
done online. Can't go on to the next step until you completed all the previous steps, things like that. So it will be.
And then will it
cleaned up.
flag for y'all that
Correct.
somebody hasn't paid? And then do we have to define consequences for that? Or are they already defined and enforcement is just not?
So I believe I have to flip through our code of ordinance to
Right.
see exactly what it says in there.
Right.
But yes, I believe we govern based on that.
Right. I'm curious what happens in other communities too, as y'all look at this process Eric and Richard, figuring out what best practices is. One of the challenges with big national anything is contacting the right person and making sure that, a manager leaves but they should have their own processes to make sure they're doing what's necessary to maintain their licensing. So if you could just if y'all could just work on it, it's probably internal.
Sure.
But that would be probably not a bad strategy, because in the past, I think some things have slipped through, like the 50%, that kind of thing. And so I think it would be really helpful for us to make sure we're checking all the boxes.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, public comments, 3 minutes. Did you get you'll get another card?
Sure.
Okay.
Hi, thanks for trying to get some clarifications, but first of all, I know that you found out it was only 7 people without paying their alcohol licenses right now. I can tell you last month it was dozens, and the only reason why the city was motivated was because of my Open Records Act request. So can you imagine not paying your taxes and no one doing anything after 2 months? Just, I guess that's the way our cities run. Anyway, also, Mayor, you tried to get clarification on the Barry Dunn with the $75,000 being sent to the police department, believing that the city hasn't paid them the full amount yet. But according to the city's checkbook, we've made 8 payments totaling $114,625. So that we're only short about $2,000 or $3,000, not $75,000. So the clarifications still don't quite add up correctly. So hopefully that will be fixed, because I'm showing otherwise. Also, we're talking money. How much is the city willing to spend fighting my lawsuit, trying to find out about the missing text messages? I'm guessing right now that y'all are probably on the hook between mine and your legal fees. It's probably totaling about $50,000. It's going to go up a lot, because we're going to depose Sharon Lowry. We're going to depose Eric Shealy. We're going to depose Ginger LePage. And then if they come out and say, well, we don't know where those text messages went, then we will depose Officer Pham, and we'll depose Chief Grogan. And it's going to get very expensive, and it's going to get very interesting and very ugly, because the city's going to lose. I mean, the facts are there, and you're fighting it to save face, but you're going to lose, and you're going to hurt the taxpayers and the residents of our city. And you're going to show that you're not transparent, and you're going to show that you really don't care about money. It's a shame, and I hate to say it, but the city is not run very well. And y'all only have yourselves to blame, our city manager, our city attorney, who doesn't quite understand the depth of the problems that you're facing. It's going to get a lot more expensive, and you're going to lose. So hopefully you'll think about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard, can you come back up here for 1 second, please? Because I'm using my prerogative. I'm guessing that the checkbook shows the 75,000. So the checkbook it's a budget adjustment for the money we spent in 23, because the study was supposed to be finished in 22, I guess, or 23. So it's just the 75,000 it's not 75,000 additional.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, city manager comments.
We did an executive session for litigation and legal purposes. That's correct.
Legal purposes and okay. Citizen council comments. Yeah, council comments. Anybody? Fish fries going on at All Saints next 4 Friday nights. It's a great way to celebrate community. Yeah, 5 to 6. You can get $1 off if you're a senior citizen. All right, with that, I need a motion to adjourn to executive session for legal.
Move to adjourn to executive session for purposes of legal.
Second. All in favor, say aye. We'll be back.
Put that on your resume. Accomplishment. Right. Taco Mac. What? Taco Mac? I gotta go home, unfortunately. You got a little, restaurant thing? No, it's just, you have a head cold or something? Yeah, I've had a little, it's been kind of. Yes. Maybe yes, early fall. Go.
Right.
What?
Taco Mac? So many good choices. Other than Taco Mac.